Good morning and welcome to Something to Talk About, our get together, usually Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays here at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. And we are grateful for a sponsorship to support this program from Fieldstone Memory Care, Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone is up on Rolling Bay and they offer innovative and compassionate care, and they are accepting residents. So if you'd like to schedule a tour of Fieldstone's beautifully appointed apartments, call 360-271-2530. 360-271-2530. And today we're going to be talking about a story that has turned into a book. The story that Anne and Chuck Eklund came across as they tried to unravel the history that was opened up by finding a series of love letters wrapped in a red ribbon. And I'm looking forward to hearing how this started and what you found along the way.
Thank you, Reed. I really appreciate and love seeing all some friendly faces up there. So that's nice to see you all, and thank you for having me. This day is significant. 80 years ago today, December 6th, nurse who was Second Lieutenant Mary Louise Haynes was on duty in the OR that morning or that evening. It was her birthday, and Mary Louise Haynes is my mother-in-law, and this is her birthday. And just as a memory of her, I'm wearing one of the necklaces of Mary Louise that we found in her jewelry box. So it means a great deal to me. But Mary Louise, or Second Lieutenant Mary Louise Haynes, was on duty that night in the OR, so she couldn't celebrate her birthday. And she had been promised by her nurse friends that she would be there on the veranda the next morning, December 7th, to celebrate her birthday. So bright and early, you can imagine this group of nurses sitting on the veranda of the hospital on the rooftop, probably sipping coffee. And in those days, they all smoked and probably having a few treats, maybe special birthday treats, and maybe they were singing happy birthday to Mary Lou. We can just imagine that they were having a good time that morning. And off in the distance, they could hear the sound of the planes. And again, that sound wasn't unusual to the nurses because as it turns out, Mary Lou would say that the nurses often, the pilots often buzzed the nurses. So it wasn't unusual for a plane to go over the hospital veranda and maybe dip their wings and, say hello to them. But the sound kept getting stronger, and the nurses knew that something was happening. And at 7:55 on December 7th, the bombing started in Pearl Harbor, and we all know that history. So as Reed was showing you the book, just let me share with you. This is Mary Lou. This is Nurse Mary Lou Haynes. And this man over here he was Captain Charles Taylor. And he happened to be on the other side of the island. He was a fighter pilot. He and his crew were on the other side of the island. And the other picture there on the cover is a small boy. And that is, that's what his cousins call Chucky. They called him little Chucky. And the overlays are the letters. And those are the actual letters that we found. As we found the letters in 1972, Chuck's mother had passed away. She had died of cancer. And in 1972, we were cleaning out her house, and that had been Chuck's childhood home. And we didn't want to live there. He didn't want to have anything to do with the house for a variety of reasons. And we found a box. I was cleaning out her closet, and way back in the closet was a shoebox. And I opened up the shoebox, and in that shoebox was some pictures of a man in uniform, and then all of these letters tied with a red ribbon, and some other, Chuck's original birth certificate. He was Charles Edward Taylor Jr. That was in there. The adoption papers when he was, from his adoption. So all of these things were in this shoebox. And Chuck had never been told anything about his real father. And so it's through these letters that we started to look for family. And that's how this memoir was really kind of born. And the book asks lots of questions. And a lot of the questions that we ask, or that I ask in the book, didn't have answers. We just keep looking for them. And, it's a whole, families are like putting puzzles together. I call them jigsaw puzzles, because we just keep finding pieces and connecting them in different ways. But not all the questions that we had got answered. But it is a story with common threads. It's a story of love, of many love stories. It's a story of loss. It's a story of hurt. It's a story of secrets. There were a lot of secrets that were kept in the family that we have uncovered some. And ultimately, we found that the letters were truly the gift that helped us find the family. If you're one of those who's searching for your family, this may resonate with you, because the determination, and people said it was my determination, I don't know about that, but I just kept finding little pieces, little tidbits that would just kind of lead me to the next step. And I'm not sure why, except that I had a burning desire to kind of know who my mother-in-law was. I saw this amazing man as my husband, and you want to kind of know where that comes from. And he didn't know his real father. So that's a little bit about the book, and I'll be glad to tell more as we go on, Reed. So
Great. Yeah, well, you entered this process without any real, at least reading it, it sounds like you didn't have any genealogical experience, or really, it was just, you got one or two pieces of the puzzle with these letters. And I'm
Right.
sure that, often when we're looking through the materials that our parents or our in-laws leave behind, they often do raise questions. Some
Right.
of them are not ever answered, as you said. But something about this piqued your interest. Here was an untold story. And so what first steps did you take?
To do the writing?
Just to try to figure out where this was going. I mean, obviously, it sounded like there was somebody else in Mary Lou's life.
Right, absolutely. And we knew that, and Chuck knew that. I'm going to read just a little portion, just one little paragraph from the book that I think was a driving force for me. And I'm not sure why, but as I said, Chuck did not know his real father. He was legally adopted by Mr. Eklund when he was about 5 or 6. And we found those adoption papers. But Chuck thought all along until this moment in his life. He said on one particular night when Chuck was around 7, he and his mother were able to get away from the hits and yelling and hide in the bathroom. As Chuck sat on the edge of the bathtub and his mother sat on the toilet seat of this very tiny room, they listened to the raging outside the door. This was the night when she chose to tell him about his real father. That son of a bitch is not your real father, she said. Your real father was a pilot and shot down in World War II in the Pacific. So that was a story that my husband had been told. That's all he was ever told about his father. And he shared that with me when we first started dating, the year we first started dating. So that was kind of gnawing at me, because I knew so much about my family. My family had a history, and, Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, we told those stories over and over again, but Chuck didn't have that history. And I think I wanted him to have it. I think, when you think what was the driving force, and I wanted to know my mother-in-law after she passed away and we found these letters. It was like, ooh, who was she? Here were these love letters. They're very obviously letters of love from Chuck's real father. And so I wanted to know more. And maybe it's because I like mysteries. I love reading mysteries and history. And so I think those two things were just kind of driving forces. But in 1972, there were no resources really for us to find anything. We assumed Chuck's father was dead. And that was just the story we told, that's all we knew. And it really wasn't until, as I tell in the book, we wrote to try to find for military records. There are places you can find, and I'd looked that up someplace. And wasn't really until the 2013, excuse me, 2008, and Ancestry.com started coming on, that, you know, we started hearing advertisements. So I just started, I retired and then flunked retirement, but had enough time on my hands to spend looking or noodling around, I called it. And, you know, you'd sit for hours at the computer, just kind of plugging in names and, you know, and my own family names. That's how I started, you know, looking up things that I already knew and could verify. So Ancestry.com has opened up the world for a lot of us. So does that help? Does that answer some questions?
Well, yes. And the other part that seemed to be a key to me as I'm looking through this book was the ability to get access to the military records.
Right, right. And
Can you
actually,
say a little bit about that?
Yes, Ancestry.com has a military history piece to it, and it was very valuable. But then you start plugging in those names, and obituaries are another wonderful source that give you information. So you have to kind of, and I think Ancestry.com, as I've gone back on it more recently, lots has changed, but then you just get you get clues. And so I would plug in, as it turned out, it was Colonel Charles Taylor. And Colonel Taylor had some history. And so we were able to find some of that. And so you write to them, and there are all kinds of forms on that you can Google and find forms where they will, you can send, you ask for death records. And again, a form will come on you get it on the computer, you print it out, you send it in. A lot of it we had to send in. One of the funniest stories is I was trying to keep a secret from Chuck because I was going to present him with a gift of going back to try and look for the family. And I had sent in a request for, I think, the death records, death certificate, and of his father. And of course he had Chuck, I was in the shower and Chuck brings the phone into me in the shower. This is when we had landlines, you know, but you know, he carries it. He said, somebody on the phone wants to know if I'm dead. And I said, what? And as it turned out, they were calling to verify who I was or who it was that was requesting. This was military death record, you know, the death record, who I was and why I wanted this. And so I'm in the shower with the phone and telling Chuck, you know, it's okay, I know. And then of course, then it spilled the story and I had to tell him the story of what I was doing, trying to find some of the records. But they're news clips, another story, just, you know, just plug in the name, just really Google the name and a lot of things will show up. But Ancestry.com allows a lot of that. And there are lots of other sites. I'm sure the Genealogy Society could give people huge numbers of sites that I have yet to explore. So.
Yes, and we will welcome questions and comments in just a couple minutes here. I'm wondering if you might talk a little bit about then the transition to thinking about this as something that you would put into a narrative, right. That transition from sort of the research into the writing.
Right. Thanks for asking that question. It's a hard one for me to answer sometimes because many people, as Chuck and I would, you know, over with friends would tell the story. People would say, oh, you need to write that story, you know, from the letters in the shoebox to, you know, finding family. And so it maybe kept in the back of my mind that, oh yeah, we need to write it. And, you know, you want to give it to your kids and those kinds of things. And actually moving to Bainbridge, and I joined a book club here, Florie's Friends. And on a couple of occasions, I was leading the group and had opportunities to share just a little bit of the story. And friends kept saying, people in the book club said, oh, you need to write that, Anne. You need to write that story. And Florie, who is also a published author, came to me, I think, after one of the book clubs and said, Anne, you know, I have an editor who you might like to talk to if you're interested in writing the story. And through Florie's contacts with editors, I developed a relationship with Jen Hager, who might be on this link today. I'm not sure.
Yes, she is. We might ask her to open up the mic in a minute, but
you might give her opinion too. Anyway, Jen and Flory came over to our house, and I laid out all the artifacts and, you know, the timelines and everything that I had, because we have all the letters and archival books and, you know, lots of different pictures, and it was all somewhat disorganized, but they're on the dining room table. And I told the story to Jen. And so then Jen, through Jen's expert coaching and Flory's support, I started to write. And I think in the beginning of the book, I was really just telling the story about Mary Lou from the third person. And I think Jen helped me build my confidence as a writer, because I had written professionally in my life as an educator, but never prose. And I think she pulled out those deep feelings in me and helped me write it from my voice. And so that was the transition, and that's when it all kind of came together, that I could do this. And it was a gift to the family. And then Jen and other people said, no, it needs to go a little further than that. So here I am.
So Jennifer, would you be willing to turn on your microphone and just say a little bit about what intrigued you in those meetings, since you're here? I hate to put you on the spot. Not really, I don't hate it, but.
That's your job.
Reed, I'm happy to be on the spot, and I'm so happy that Anne is talking about this book and about the process. Well, it was clear that she had an incredible story. And in my mind, I felt as if here's someone who followed a trail of breadcrumbs. And even in the years when she couldn't do anything about it, she was still wondering and wishing, you know, I want to follow this. And when I look at the outcomes, I'm not going to ruin anything, but when I look at the outcomes of her journey, I felt like she won the jackpot. She just, you know, it just gives me goosebumps. So it was really a pleasure to just be of support, you know, as she worked through the writing process. And,
I'm wondering a little bit about that, because obviously writing, especially a story with as many sort of leaves or literal chapters as this one, is a challenge. And she seems to have had well, the two of you definitely, because of the end result, have a gift to telling a story in a clear and engaging way. But did she bring a lot of that herself, just somewhat?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
She's being modest. There were lots of moments back and forth, because we did it all online, actually, Reed. It was very interesting, because with COVID, the meeting I had with Jen and Flory was the February, I think, before COVID was the lockdown. And then everything else was done online. And occasionally we would meet with masks or whatever, but everything was done that way. And so back and forth. And there were lots of, I'll be honest, there were lots of tears on my side, not frustrating from writing, but tears of emotion, because as I'm writing, I'm, you know, my own family history, and then, well, and Chuck, and the sadness of not necessarily being able to answer all those questions that we wanted to, that I ask. And also the sadness about Mary Lou, because I felt like my mother-in-law was she had a love in her life, and that, you know, there were things that went wrong and or went differently than maybe she would have planned. And so I think a sadness of not knowing her better and not being able for her to see her grandchildren, and just as life.
Exactly. Yeah, there's definitely a bittersweet aspect to this project.
Yes. Yeah.
So the book is published and it's available. You said that it's even on the shelves of Eagle Harbor Books.
Absolutely.
And you put together a website,
right,
which is beautiful. I might just share it if you don't mind.
That's a local designer named Etta Lilienthal. Okay.
And so it's at theribbonuntied.com.
Right.
And that ribbon is the ribbon that was around these letters. Right?
Well, yeah, that might not have been the original one, Reed, but
No,
and
but I
that's
mean,
Chuck put together that photograph, and then there's some blogs there, and that's Chuck's real father there. A few blogs that have written, and there's some of the actual letters are on the website, and that people can see, and so.
great. And so I just think this is I mean, it's a lot of work and a stunning accomplishment, and you've turned out to be an author.
Well, that's a surprise. Right, yeah.
And go ahead.
I think a gift, and without giving everything away, we have found some family, and that has been wonderful. And the acceptance of that. So maybe after people have read the book, you hate to tell everything, but at the same time, just as I'll give you a little secret, Chuck has a brother who's 2 months younger than he is. So we'll just leave it at that, you know. No.
Great. And you've also been introduced to this wonderful world of genealogy. I see that some of the Bainbridge Island Genealogy Club are on as well.
Oh, great. Great.
If anybody has a question or a comment they'd like to make, just open up your microphone and talk away. Colleen, are you trying to unmute yourself? I don't know if you are. Maybe that will help.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Oh. Okay. Yes, Flory.
Yeah,
Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll make one comment, which is that when Anne first told Chuck's story at a book group, I was riveted by it. And that's kind of why I probably urged you a little bit, Anne. And then I think we had coffee, and again,
Right.
I felt myself moved to tears to hear this story. And then just a couple of months ago, when I received a copy of the book, I was in a position when I really wasn't feeling like reading any books at all. I was helping a family member through a medical crisis. And I thought, well, I'll read this later, but I picked up the book and I started to read it. And I don't think I put it down till I finished. That story is just extremely riveting, and I would recommend it to all of you. It's well written and it comes from the heart, and it's kind of a mystery, as well as having a very fulfilling ending. And Anne did a wonderful job of writing it in the third person, which is, I mean, the first person, telling your relation to the story, and that was perfect.
Thank
So,
you, Corey. That was.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Jennifer, for doing
So
your
you can
magic.
see why Flory was the one who introduced me to Jennifer. So that was a wonderful, wonderful collaboration.
Rita.
Oh, hi, Anne. I was wondering, have you started your next book yet?
Oh, Rita, I think this is a one-off. I think it's just a one. Yeah. Yeah. I don't. I do find though now that that I'm more interested in the genealogy. Are you part of the genealogy group?
I am not.
Yeah,
I'm
looking forward to have joined and getting to know some of those people, because the book has opened up so many other possibilities of ways to search for not only my family, but Chuck's family. And we now have more names and more cousins and more, more possibilities. And so I'm probably going to go down a few of those rabbit holes in the genealogy group. So
Yeah, well, you did learn. Yeah, you did learn that there were stories that can be, just things uncovered through the search. Right. I wonder if there's anybody else Sue, if you might say anything about some of your experience with genealogy, or how it's how you found it invigorating. Maybe Larry.
Well, I've been involved with genealogy now for well over 30 years. I
Wow.
basically wanted to know where my ancestors came from and then to go and visit the villages. And I have done that. I've been to a little town near Mainz, Germany, that's been in existence for 700 years. And the cemetery is filled with my ancestors.
Oh, how fun.
It's my family. And I have been to Potenza, Italy, where all of my father's family came from.
Mm.
And likewise, we visited Ireland. I may never know where they came from in Ireland, but I did visit there to know it. And then I've been to the ancestral town of my great grandmother in Sweden.
Mm.
So I've kind of combined both loves of travel and genealogy and meeting new relatives. And my husband had an interesting event in 2020. We got an email from a lady in Germany that shares my husband's last name, Hassenmüller. She's his 7th cousin, and she's traced the family back for 3 more generations than what I knew. And we've had some Zoom calls, and hopefully in 2023, we can get over there and visit her and get to know her.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And the third Friday of every month, starting in January, we do have a open meeting. So even if you're not a member, you can attend. And right now it's by Zoom. We hopefully will be back at the library this year, but we never know. But if you log into the Bainbridge Island Genealogical Society website, you should get the information in order to join us.
And I will share that link with anyone who's on the call whose email I have. And if you aren't a member of the Senior Center and would like a link to this, just send me a note at reed@biseniorcenter.org, and I'll send you back a link to this video plus the other related links. Well, Anne, I think that maybe the idea of the puzzle pieces is what will stay with you.
Yes.
And possibly with your family. I'm sure that you and Chuck working together on this have given a great gift to your children and descendants and relatives.
We hope so. Yeah. And they've given it to us. So it's been a wonderful adventure, a journey with lots of unexpected unknowns. But I think we all have a deep desire to know our family and to know from where we come and to know some of the stories. And I think it's a personal, I love history, and I've taught students to teach history. I was in my former life. And one of the things I would always say to my students that were learning to be history teacher is, lots of kids will say history is boring to them. If you were to ask high school kids, what's your most, a lot of them will say history. And I talk to them about helping their students find about the stories well told, but because I think it's the stories of the people's lives that capture us. I think that's what makes history come alive for us are those stories. It's not the battles. It might be for some people the battles, the dates, the heroes that we all have, but it's really the personal stories of those people. And I think of Ken Burns, who can tell those stories so beautifully and capture who the real people were that were there on the ground doing the work or living their lives around all these historical events. And if you can capture kids to learn history from that personal history standpoint and their own history. So I hope that if people read the book, that maybe they'll be inspired to know more about their own family history. Would be one of my goals. Yes.
Yeah, Bonnie has a comment or question.
And I was wondering, Anne, if you would read a little bit from the book.
That's a tough one. Which part? Should I read the ending?
No.
Beginning. The beginning? Yeah. Well, I talk about my own family at the beginning. So I could talk about I could do the introduction and that might
Okay.
help. Okay. If everyone would indulge me here. See, I have to take my glasses off to do this, I guess, or get it further out, because these are my computer glasses. See, writing about discovering my husband Chuck's family has been an emotional journey. It is certainly not one I had expected to write. I am not a confident writer of prose, but I desperately wanted to tell Mary Lou's story. Mary Lou was Chuck's mother. She had him out of wedlock. He knew he was a bastard and he was quite proud of it. Chuck was raised by Mary Lou and a stepfather. The only blood relative Chuck thought he had growing up was his mother. Chuck's stepfather died when Chuck was in his early 20s, and a few years later, his mother passed away. He was told very little about any family members. He never knew grandparents, aunts or uncles, cousins or siblings. But what kept me wanting to know more about Chuck's mother? Why did I start this project? There is a mystery to the whole saga. I wanted to know Mary Lou as a woman who had made it on her own. Why did she make the decision she had made about her son? Basically, I wanted to know what made her tick. What started as my curiosity about Mary Lou gradually evolved into a genealogical quest to find Chuck's family. Could I uncover some of the family secrets? Should I even try to uncover those secrets? When I started writing about my adventure of seeking Mary Lou's history, I wrote it in the third person, just telling the facts about Mary Lou. The writing fell flat. I was like a distant bystander recounting the people, dates, and things that had happened, much like a newspaper article. These facts were interesting, but they did not evoke any emotion or create any sense of Mary Lou's innermost feelings. What was missing was my voice, my desire, my interest, and what I hoped to accomplish. I wanted to portray the discoveries about the journey, plus the perseverance and curiosity that kept me focused on the quest. My voice was valued and necessary in order to share all I had learned about Mary Lou. I am the storyteller. In this process of writing, I am reliving much of my own family history. My family had given me a rich, well-defined past of many generations. My family's stories reside in my heart and my brain. I wanted to find and to give Chuck his family stories. Pushing through this goal, I have spent many years researching, uncovering clues, and revealing family histories. More importantly, in my quest to uncover Mary Lou's history, I have come to understand the essence in my husband, her essence in my husband. I've learned to see her in the letters and pictures she left behind, and I have found her in my own daughters as they've grown into beautiful, strong women. Mary Lou is a part of them all. This revelation came as a surprise, but it has been right there under my nose the whole time. So after weeks of trying to tell the story from the outside looking in, I moved inside myself. And from my own perspective, I began to write the adventure of finding Chuck's family. This is that story.
Thank you, Bonnie, for asking her to read that.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. That was great.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you.
And very much appreciate you coming on. I know that this was your first interview about the book.
It is.
And we loved it.
Thank you, Reed, for having me. Thank you to all of you.